Okay, let's unpack this. Um, Imagine looking up at the sky, right, and seeing something just totally unexplainable fall right out of it. Or maybe a formation of lights that just it defies all logic. Our deep dive today is going into exactly that kind of phenomena, drawing from some really fascinating accounts and research you've shared with us.
Yeah, and what's truly striking when you look at your sources is how these instant they seem so different on the surface. You've got metallic spheres
All
crashing
right.
and then these silent triangular lights just hanging there, but they consistently point to these big gaps in how we understand the world around us. Our mission today is really to sift through these reports.
Mm.
We want to highlight the most striking details, obviously, but also maybe get at the bigger questions they raise.
Absolutely. So we're going to dive deep into two main types of these unexplained things. First, we'll tackle these these strange metallic spheres that have literally been dropping out of the sky for years. People sometimes call them space balls, kind of informally. Then we'll look upwards at these reports of mysterious lights, especially formations that don't move, often in these weird geometric shapes. And just to be clear, this isn't about us saying this is aliens or this is secret tech. It's about pulling out the knowledge, the insights from the material you provided, and just grappling with how weird some of this stuff actually is, stuff that doesn't fit neatly into our boxes. So let's kick things off with these spaceballs. If you haven't heard about these, prepare yourself because they're definitely not your average meteorite. We're talking about these really enigmatic metallic spheres. They've apparently been falling from the sky for decades, leaving just a whole lot of questions behind. And what your sources show right away is just how widespread this is. There's no real pattern to where they land. The reports say they've popped up like everywhere. China, France, Spain.
Vietnam,
S-
Brazil, exactly. Even here in the United States, it's not like they're all landing along one flight path or something predictable. They just kind of appear,
yeah.
often without much warning.
And the consistency across these reports, globally, that's what's really compelling. They're almost always described as metallic spheres.
Hmm.
Many accounts put them around, say, 3.2 feet, which is about a meter across. Weight-wise, typically 45 to 50 pounds seems common.
Okay.
But your sources also show big variations. Some reported as heavy as 100 pounds, and then others are tiny, surprisingly small. There was one case, I think, just 9 ounces.
Wow, 9 ounces to 100 pounds. That's a huge range.
It is. And your sources even get into their composition, talking about alloys maybe unknown to us, suggesting they could withstand incredible heat or maybe even self-repair somehow. It gets pretty wild.
And the really baffling part seems to be, what are they for? Where did they come from? The sources say they don't seem to have any visible inner workings, no obvious function, they don't explode, and usually they don't give off radiation, which kind of rules out a lot of the usual suspects.
They're just described as these, yeah, truly alien objects. Like they just materialized, crashed, and then just sit there. Inert, but undeniably there.
Which naturally makes you ask, okay, what do the authorities say? And your sources point out this recurring thing. The military is often, the term used is eerily silent.
Mm.
When they do say something, it's usually quite vague, likely space debris.
Likely.
Exactly. But never confirming a specific source. And critically, the reports usually dismiss the idea they're just like plane parts falling off.
Because there aren't plane crashes matching up with them.
Precisely. If planes were shedding big, heavy things like this, we'd know about it. We'd see wreckage, major incidents.
Yeah, that makes sense. Which brings us to some specific examples that really make this concrete, like the incident in Spain you mentioned. A
Yeah.
few years back, 3 of these things apparently fell into a village there,
Hey.
caused total panic, understandably, and the scene was so unusual they brought in personnel wearing protective biosuits to check them out. That sounds like more than just looking at space junk. That sounds like serious caution.
It does suggest they were treating it as potentially hazardous or at least completely unknown, a full-blown investigation, not just a cleanup. And then you have the Vietnam case back in 2016. Also really interesting, especially the details. Again, 3 objects found. Seems to be a pattern there, right? 3 in Spain, 3 in Vietnam.
Yeah, I noticed that too.
But what's remarkable in Vietnam is the weight difference in that single event. One was a hefty 100 pounds, but the smallest of the 3 was just 9 ounces.
That's incredible. Same event, such different objects.
Exactly. And adding to it, locals reported hearing something like raging thunder just minutes before they found them. Suggests maybe an atmospheric entry or some kind of energetic event. Having 3 objects with such wildly different masses arrive together that really challenges the simple, oh, it's just space debris explanation.
So the pattern here feels, well, It feels significant. Like you said, maybe some could be explained away as spent fuel tanks or whatever. But the sheer number of these things, the consistency, metallic spheres landing near people, these biosuit investigations, and no clear answers. It does suggest something more is going on. Your sources definitely push towards something beyond just mundane explanations.
And naturally, when explanations fail, theories start to bubble up from the sources themselves. Some suggest maybe they're alien satellites, although X-rays apparently show they're hollow.
Huh. So maybe not satellites for carrying equipment, but something else.
Perhaps. Maybe not designed to hold anything, but maybe to transmit or receive. Or act as navigation markers. It's pure speculation, of course. Other reports mention things like strange magnetic oscillations, accounts of them vibrating, humming.
Or even moving on their own.
Yes, subtly moving when they're just sitting there undisturbed.
Wow. Okay, speaking of objects moving on their own, nothing highlights that, quite like the Betz Mystery Sphere, does it? Florida, 1974. This is where the story gets really, really weird. So this family, they're driving, they see a brush fire, they go check it out, and they find this polished metal sphere, maybe 8 inches across, sitting there, miraculously untouched by the fire it was right next to.
Right, like it was immune to the heat. And what happened after they took it home is, well, it's the stuff of legend, according to your sources. The family reported it started moving by itself, vibrating, making these strange humming or resonant sounds.
Rolling across tables.
Apparently without anyone pushing it. The sources hint at maybe some kind of internal energy source or localized field, something totally outside our usual understanding of physics. It supposedly reacted to sound too, changing its vibrations, and even seemed to follow people around the house sometimes.
Exactly. It didn't take long for people to start calling it an alien artifact. But what's also striking is how the family just went silent about it later on, stopped talking to the media entirely. And the sphere itself, despite scientists and military looking at it back then, it's still officially unexplained today.
So the real puzzle isn't just what it was, but how it did what it did. How does an object seemingly defy physics like that? It really makes you question things.
Okay, so from things falling down, let's shift focus now to things just hanging up there. These mysterious light formations, equally baffling. And as the sources show, they appear with a consistency that's hard to ignore. Often leaves witnesses feeling, well, pretty profoundly affected. We actually have a great account from a listener. This was in Gilbert, Arizona, on the 4th of July, interestingly enough. Picture this. So at 8:30 p.m., they've just come home from watching fireworks. They look up and see a triangular formation of lights.
Oh.
And the key thing was these lights were just sitting there in the sky, perfectly still, stationary, for about 10 minutes. No noise, no visible means of propulsion.
Silent and stationary. That's a common theme.
Right. And the witness, they grabbed their phone, managed to get just a quick 7-second video before the phone ran out of memory.
Ah, typical.
Isn't it always the way? And when they went back out an hour later, gone. Vanished completely.
And to put that sighting in context, the Gilbert case, it's far from unique. These triangular objects, often seen as these distinct points of light, silent, not blinking, they've been reported by so many people all over the world. And what's more, your sources mention they're not just seen in our atmosphere, they've apparently been spotted in space, too, which suggests either some incredibly advanced, stealthy aircraft we don't know about, or a phenomenon that isn't really limited by geography or altitude. The consistency of these silent geometric formations across decades and continents, it's really quite remarkable.
But the plot thickens, right? Because it's not always just points of light. Your sources also mention other accounts, like I think there was one from rural Texas in 2012.
Oh, yes, that one's striking.
Multiple people saw not just a formation, but one huge, dark, triangular object moving slowly overhead.
Solid object.
Yeah, it's solid. Unlike the Arizona lights, this thing was described as having subtle, pulsing red lights on the corners and a bigger, steady white light in the middle. And what really got the witnesses was the complete silence, despite its massive size, and how it blocked out the stars as it moved.
Indicating a real physical structure.
Exactly. Not just lights. They described feeling this sense of awe, maybe even a bit of dread, as it just moved deliberately across the sky. And then it just accelerated away at an impossible speed.
And this is where your sources kind of throw up their hands, in a way. They state pretty clearly that without more data, we just don't know what these things are. Could they be ours? You know, top secret military craft, maybe advanced stealth planes we haven't seen. Or, as the more speculative sources lean, could they be from off-planet? That ambiguity is central. It leaves this huge space for possibilities, and it forces us to confront the limits of what we know technologically and maybe even cosmologically. And your sources suggest maybe that eerily silent response from officials we talked about with the spheres. Maybe it applies here too. When these big, weird triangles get reported, is the silence just because they don't know? Or is it covering up classified projects? Or maybe acknowledging something they can't explain? Or just trying to manage public reaction to the truly unknown?
So, okay, we've looked at these metallic spheres falling down the space balls, showing weird properties, weird compositions. And we've looked at these silent triangular lights, sometimes formations, sometimes solid objects, seen all over doing impossible things or just sitting there.
Yeah.
What's the common thread here for you, the listener, trying to piece this together?
Well, the common thread, I think, it's not just that they're unexplained, it's how they expose these fundamental gaps in our science, gaps in how governments maybe handle information about the unknown. These aren't just one-off weird events you can easily look aside. They're repeated patterns, documented, sometimes even investigated by serious people, military scientists. And yet, they remain without a clear public explanation. It really challenges our basic assumptions about what's known versus what's possible, both from space and maybe within our own atmosphere. It forces us to kind of rethink where the boundaries of our understanding actually lie.
Which is exactly why thinking critically about this stuff is so key, isn't it? It's about being open to strange possibilities, but also recognizing, okay, here's where our knowledge currently stops. And there's real value in looking at all these different perspectives, even the really speculative ones, just to try and build a bigger picture, even if parts of that picture are still really fuzzy.
Absolutely. So as you reflect on these accounts we've discussed, what stands out most to you? Is it the incredible consistency in the reports, the genuinely strange behavior of these objects, or maybe it's that official silence, those vague explanations? Each part adds another layer to the puzzle, doesn't it? It sort of demands we look a bit deeper than just the surface story.
So as we start to wrap up this deep dive, the core mystery is still right there. Unexplained objects keep showing up. Whether they're falling out of space or just hovering in our skies, they seem to defy our standard understanding of, well, of physics, of technology, maybe even of life itself.
Yeah, the sources we've gone through today, they really highlight a fascinating truth, I think. Even now, in our super connected, high-tech world, there are still these profound mysteries literally hovering just over our heads, or sometimes landing right at our feet. The unknown is still this vast, intriguing frontier. It reminds us just how much more there might be to discover beyond what we currently see as reality.
And we want to encourage you to think about this. What if the most interesting answers aren't just out there somewhere, waiting for us to find them? What if some of them have, well, already arrived, and just waiting for us to really understand what we're looking at?
Which raises a really important question for you to maybe mull over. In a world just flooded with information, how do you decide what's truly anomalous, truly strange, versus what's just something we don't understand yet? And what role does official secrecy or silence play in making that distinction?
Definitely something to think about. Keep those minds curious, everyone. Keep asking the questions and keep diving deep into the extraordinary. We hope this has sparked your interest to maybe continue your own exploration into these genuinely unexplained phenomena.